After much travelling, you've finally made it to the Forgotten Temple in the middle of the jungle. What do you want to do?
Oh, I want to loot everything.
Of course you do.
18.
Great. Well, you find a glowing book on a pedestal in the middle of the temple.
Sweet.
I would like to investigate the glowing book. Go for it.
Sorry.
Yeah, just try again. Dropped another one. I'll just. Yeah. No. I've got loads. I'll just redo. One more time. Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Bear with me. I've got like. Yeah. Okay. Hey look, this one's a keyring. Hey, where did everybody go?
Hello! In this episode we're going to be making a dice tower to help those pesky polyhedrals stay on the table. For this build I'm going to use a skull I bought as a Halloween decoration. I've used one of these before for another project, you'll see that at the end. And we're going to basically take a chunk out of the back of it and take a bit out of the front of it to allow dice to fall through. Here I've got a bit of scrap MDF that I'm measuring up to see if we can have the dice roll onto something, and I'm also going to mark out here where the hole I want to cut in the top of the skull and the bottom of the skull is going to be, so that I can throw my dice through. I cut the holes out using the Dremel. Be sure to wear eye protection when you're doing this, because those little chunks of plastic that you can't really see flying out will really hurt your eyes, so be careful if you do choose to do anything like this. Now that we've got our holes cut, we'll do a little test to see if dice will fall through the skull. They look good. In order to suspend the skull up a bit, I'm drilling some holes in the cheeks to apply a dowel rod that goes in each cheek, and that lets it sit up above the rolling plate. Now that we've got our holes cut, I'm going to cut some dowel to size so that we can elevate the skull above the rolling plate. With both of those cut, it's time to hot glue them into the skull. All I'm doing is applying a liberal amount of hot glue over the hole and then pushing the dowel through the hot glue into the top of the skull. Do that on both sides, and now we can put our jaw back on. I kind of want the jaw just to look like it's hanging open, or if it's if the skull's screaming at you. Pretty creepy, but you know, it's D&D, innit? Now I want the pillars to look a bit, well, gruesome, I suppose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply beads of hot glue all the way down in a dripping fashion to appear like dripping blood, as if the skull is crying pools of blood, and then the blood is going to coagulate at the bottom into a nice puddle of blood, and that's where our dice are going to land. Festive, right? I really enjoyed this step. It was a bit daft and it gives a really good effect. I mean, you go for a few sticks of hot glue, but, you know, worth it. I think the effect looked great in the end. To help the whole thing stand up, I'm going to pin the pillars into the MDF base. So all I'm doing there is using my pin vise to put a bit of gardening wire into the bottom of the MDF and the pillars with a bit of super glue to keep it in place. Now to create the blood pool, that sounds weird to say, at the bottom of the rolling tower, I'm going to use some run-of-the-mill polystyrene, and I'm just going to use a hot wire cutter to cut chunks of it and then sculpt those chunks into kind of craggy rock shapes and glue them to the MDF base. One final step to the base before we start painting is to add some larger rocks to fill some of the gaps in between the larger polystyrene rocks, and to just add a sand base layer around the outer rim of the rock pool. Spray paint will melt polystyrene, so in order to protect it I've mixed up some black paint and some PVA glue, and I'm applying it to as much of the surface as I can get, ready for spray paint. Off camera I took it away and sprayed it black and bone colour for the skull, and now it's time to give a bit more definition to the stone. For this I'm going to use a sort of blue-grey. I think it adds a nice contrast to the red of the blood, because there's a lot of red. A nice bit of blue to cool it down a bit. I don't know if that's colour theory or if it's just daft, looks good, make brain go nice. So it worked, I was happy with it in the end. I did melt the polystyrene a little bit, so there's a couple of fixes that I had to do here and there. I did those off camera again. Next up was a base layer for the blood. I went with a sort of very dark brown. I probably went a bit heavy with the black pigment on the paint. You'll see a tiny little bit of acrylic paint goes a long way. But I applied this sort of dark brown in all the recesses and all the corners quite liberally, so that I could build layers on later on. I picked out some details in the skull with the same red paint. Here I'm just applying it into the crevices and rubbing it away with my thumb. Not being too careful about it, just slapping it in there and getting it on. Doesn't have to look super, just want it to add a bit of definition to the skull. Oh yeah, and I also painted the eyes black. For the top layer of red, I used the Humbrol Gloss Red paint. Super shiny, super icky, super gory, and just looks really cool. And there we have it, the final product. Really happy with how it's turned out. Before we go and test it, I did say at the start of the video that I've made something else out of one of these skulls before as well. Here it is, it's a servo skull from Warhammer 40k. I made this for a game of Dark Heresy that we were playing at the time, and it was just a fun little prop to have on the table whilst we were playing. It used to light up, but it doesn't anymore. I think I've blown the LED. But yeah, another fun little project. So here we are, we've got it on the table. Let's try and roll some dice for it and see what happens. Hopefully it works the way we want it to. Yep, sure it does. Ah, you see, it even rolls crits. Brilliant. But yeah, again, really happy with this. It does roll natural ones as well, but that's fine. If you did like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for those of you who have already. Press that like button as well. There's a little thumb down below. You're welcome to do that. And if you want to mention anything or have any comments, please do share them down below. Really appreciate that. But that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. See you around next time, guys, for the next video. Cheers.